Now, the role of the church in governance has come to the fore again as government reacts to comments by Reverend Dr. Mensa Otabil. In a short message at the Festival of Ideas 2014, Dr. Otabil said there is the need for a decisive leadership response, one that follows the rules and seizes the urgency of the moment to save a sinking situation. He said Ghana's boat was sinking and needed measures that were intentional, decisive, and methodical in saving the sinking boat from choppy waters. But his comment didn't go down well with government, as the communications minister, Dr. Omani Boama, has expressed displeasure over the comments, accusing Dr. Otabil of trying to paint a non-existent picture. But should the church really care about governance, what makes it okay for elected leaders to run to the church for peace messages but find it hard to accept opinions or learned views of church leaders? We'll find out, and we'll deal with the angles from a different dimension. This is today's big story with me, Stephen Enti. Today's big story is brought to you in association with Nationwide PVC suppliers and fabricators of high-grade UPVC windows and doors. Now, the head pastor of the International Central Gospel Church, Dr. Mensa Otabil, calls for a new leadership response to Ghana's crisis situation. But government says his call is out of context, as the situation on the ground does not suggest a crisis. The back and forth raises two issues over the governance situation in our country. One, what is the church's role in governance? And two, what can and what can the church not engage in when it comes to politics and leadership matters? Well, let's first hear Reverend Dr. Mensa Otabil's short but provoking message at the Festival of Ideas.
It's obvious that the times we are in require leadership that responds to crisis with clarity and with purpose. On the morning of April 15, 1912, the Titanic sank. It was a ship that was considered unsinkable. It had the latest technology of its day. It had been built with the intention that it would survive the hazards of the sea. And yet, it hit an iceberg, and within 2.5 hours, it was down on the ocean floor. On that night, when the Titanic sank, it was not the only ship in the waters at that time. There were 3 ships, including the Titanic itself, and another ship called the Californian, and the Carpathia. These 3 ships were in the same vicinity, and they were piloted by 3 different captains. And in those 3 captains, we see leadership and how it responds to crisis. A crisis most of the time is very sudden. It's unpredictable. Sometimes you can see it coming. Other times it just hits you. It's very intense. It spirals. And if it's not well managed, it becomes a catastrophe or a disaster. It has been said that we are in a crisis in our country. That's a bit subjective based on who is saying what. But we can all say that all is not well. as Vikram clearly showed us, and showing us the folly of some of the undertakings we've committed ourselves to.
Well, we have the Christian Council, General Secretary of the Christian Council, Reverend Dr. Opuni Frimpong, on the telephone line, and we also have political science lecturer, Dr. Amwako Ban, who are joining us for this discussion. But let's first hear government's reaction over Otabill's comment, and then we will launch into the discussion.
Nobody has said that the city hasn't faced some challenges. Nobody has said that the economy hasn't faced some challenges, but to translate that into the kind of picture that he wants to paint, I think is very unfortunate. My limitation is that the good book says, touch not my anointed. But I want to say that if you have an economy that is growing by above 6%, it is very difficult for you to situate it within the context that Pastor Mensa Otabil want to paint. We have spoken about the prospects of the gas infrastructure, reversing the huge imports of crude oil products that come in to fire our thermal plant. We have recently indicated a program with the International Monetary Fund, which in itself will assist in restoring the kind of confidence that the international community would want to see.
Well, let's get on to the phone line now. Reverend Dr. Opuni Frimpong, General Secretary of the Christian Council of Ghana. Good evening, sir, and thanks for your time.
Good evening, and good evening to your cherished viewers.
Now, I want us to take this discussion a little bit out of the political context so we don't get murky with it in terms of politics, but let's look at it in a governance perspective. Does the Christian Council discourage its members from directly engaging in the governance debate in any form?
Thank you for the opportunity, and let me say that I really want to discuss the positions of Dr. Mensa Otabil. He is a Ghanaian, he is a voter. Per our constitution, he is free to share his thoughts on the issues. And therefore, I want to leave him and just respond to the question you have answered. Now, we are not under military dictatorship. We are under democracy as a people in our governance. And democratic governance means that the power politicians hold are the people's power, and civil society must hold politicians, leaders, responsible and accountable for the power they wield. Again, we must understand that in politics or in governance, there's something we call social contract. You came to me calling for my will, my sovereign will, my power, and you gave me a promise that you make life better, you improve conditions of life. And so we are free to talk as a people, and religious people, Christian leaders, are part of civil society. Per our constitution, nothing stops them from airing their voices, the sentiment of their people. Christian Council of Ghana, to a large extent, allow our people to hold their leaders accountable, traditional leaders, church leaders, as well as those in governance.
Right, Dr.
That is our position.
Dr. Opuni Frimpong, but how come that, of the various pastors in this country, it does appear that only a few are bold enough to raise these concerns? When I take Dr. Otabill's concerns, for example, he talked about the fact that the country needs a new form of leadership. He talks about decisive leadership, which will take advantage of the urgency of the situation to, direct the course of affairs. Is this the mandate of a pastor to say?
There is something I believe the churches in this country, we are not doing right. You see, there's something we call Christian citizen mobilization. Now we are making a church and Christianity a more personal spirituality. And you find out that the Christian impact on society, Christian impact on governance, Christian impact on policy making and policy implementation in Ghana is not the best. And one of the areas that we must open the avenue is citizen mobilization. You know, citizen participation in governance. We have about 70% of Ghanaians being Christians, and you don't see the church where you want the church to be. In fact, this is a project Christian Council of Ghana we want to undertake to run workshops for our pastors across the country so that we engage leaders, district chief executives, regional administration, traditional leaders. You know, if we get civil society that's very strong, and that's what we must have in democracy, things will change. Politicians sometimes take us for granted. As for the insult, leaders must know that if you are really, really for the people, whether they praise you or they hurt you, that is why you are there. If you read history, you know, where changes have taken place, whether you are talking about South Africa and apartheid, you find pastors, Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the others even on the street for demonstration. We talk about Martin Luther King, Baptist pastor who was against racial discrimination in the U.S. And we have reached a point where churches must mobilize even to speak a stronger voice to the extent of even going to the street to let our leaders know that you can't handle us. Some of the contracts our leaders are signing, some of the laws being passed, the way traditional leaders are selling land, and the unnecessary tension we are having in this country. Civil society must be up and doing, and this is the time I will go all out and encourage pastors in this country. Don't be quiet. What affects the people must affect us, and we must show concern. The insult is nothing. Some have even died for their faith. So pastors should not be afraid of insult and verification and all that. And some of those in government are not better politicians than us in religion. And of course, we may not be more religious than some of them in government.
Right, Dr. Opuni from Pong, well said. I'll keep you on hold briefly and get onto the other telephone line and speak to Professor Richard Amwako-Ban, who is also joining us. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Now, Otabil raises key issues. He said there is a need for decisive leaders who follow the rules and seize the urgency of the moment to transform the country. Is this in order? I mean, you, from where you stand, do you see a sinking situation?
I have voices in the line.
Right. I'll try and ask the question again. I think we're having a mix-up of voices on our audio system. Okay, so I'm saying that ultimately raises key issues, which more like borders on the fact that Ghana needs decisive leaders, leaders who are going to be firm and going to put in place intentional plans to direct our country towards the objective that we want to go. I mean, from where you stand, he makes reference of a sinking situation. Do you think our political situation is sinking to the extent that we need this kind of leadership he's talking about?
Well, okay. As a father said, yes, indeed, he has a right to speak his mind. Everybody has a right to. As a matter of fact, we should have more people like him. And he gave the example of Martin Luther King, Desmond Tutu. Malcolm X was also a religious leader. I mean, what is it that we think that if you are a man of God, you should not speak about temporal things? St. Augustine was talking about that. St. Augustine. Aquinas talking about that. Luther was challenging civil authority. And so what are we talking about? We should not allow these politicians to bully the preachers into silence. If the masses of your people in the congregation are suffering and you cannot speak about that, what else can you speak about? I don't understand it at all. And so we should not entertain that argument at all. They're just trying to bully these people so that they cannot criticize them. If they praise them, it is okay. But if they say the other way, then they come up with all these things that man of God should not be talking about this and that. Look, John the Baptist, you know why the woman asked for her head. He criticized Herod that he cannot marry his brother's wife. That is why the woman was so upset. He spoke up. the truth. And that is what we need in this country. What is the point of having religion when you can't speak up about people's very lives?
So the question I want to actually start exploring is that when we talk about governance, the church's role in governance and the church's role in politics, are there any distinction between them? Where do we draw the line between what the church can engage in and what it cannot?
Okay, all right. I will admit that it is not appropriate for church leaders to be involved in day-to-day running and criticism of government. But when things get this bad, when it gets to the point where the whole future of the nation seems bleak, if they don't speak up, when can they speak up? So it depends on the situation. For example, if government is going okay, you will not hear many preachers get involved, and that is how it should be. But when it gets very bad, or for example, let's suppose a woman is supposed to be stoned to death or something like that. Should the preachers speak up? Of course they should. Suppose somehow we have a military government and it has sanctioned that somebody ought to be shot or something, and you know the person is innocent. Should preachers speak up? Yes. And in a lot of ways, this is why we are, because things have gotten so bad. This is why you get people speaking up. Because if it gets bad and you don't speak up, what are you going to do after the whole thing is destroyed? And so, yes, it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
It is not appropriate for church leaders to be involved on a daily basis in politics. But this is not what we're talking about.
Right. I'll hold you briefly and wrap up with Dr. Opuni Frimpong. Doc, if you can hear me, I mean, Professor raised a key issue which I want to bring to your attention. In the past, church leaders and pastors were prosecuted for having a voice. I mean, during the revolution era, there are many pastors who were prosecuted for supporting the opposition movement to change government. Doesn't it frighten you that in an era of in our democratic era now, it does appear that the systems are working to silence pastors from speaking their mind? Is that what you feel from your standpoint as a representative of the Christian Council?
I will say that our democracy is still growing, and we are yet to have a mature democracy in this country. And the scenario you have just described is a manifestation of immature democracy, you know, where people are so intolerant because democracy thrives on discourse, on dialogue. You know, so when you have a situation where opinions are being shared and somebody gives you impression that you don't have the right to speak, I am in governance, I am in politics. And it's sad to say, you know, some of our politicians are not even students of politics. Some of them have not studied politics anywhere. You know, they belong to some professions, and you won election, and now you are into governance. So to tell other people that now I have power, don't talk about what I do, and that kind of thing, is very trivial, you know, and we are all in together. Churches belong to civil society. So the fear and other things you have described, yes, people have gone through worse experiences, but they are manifestation of immature our democracy.
Right. And
let's grow our democracy to the point that we are ready to tolerate dissenting views.
Right.
You know, we can't all think alike, and politicians must learn it, and they must learn it fast, that people must be free to speak their mind in this country, and they should not be seen as enemies who should be destroyed.
Right, Reverend, we're grateful for your time. Reverend Dr. Opuni Frimpong is the General Secretary of the Christian Council of Ghana. We're grateful that you could join us. Later, we will get onto the phone lines to speak to governance expert David Agbe, who is from the Ghana Institute of Governance and Security. Professor Richard Amwako Ba, you're still there. I mean, I need to find out from you. I mean, you as an intellectual have been possibly studying the political terrain for some time now. Over the past few months, there being dissent, there being demonstrations against governance, there being Occupy Flagstaff House, there being Red Friday. Is this a demonstration that our ship is sinking? I mean, as Otabil is putting it.
Well, yes, in some ways, yes. I mean, that description is not far off the mark. I mean, how else would you describe it when everything seems going south? If it means thinking, yes, everything is going down. Government can't even pay statutory payment, which means, in effect, laws have been suspended, disobeyed. And so, yes, who in this country is not feeling it? Filth in Accra, coroner on the spread, national health insurance almost collapsed. What else do you want me to talk about? All of these corruption going on. Today, President Rawlings added his voice. I mean, who does not know? So how else do you want us to describe the situation by thinking? Some would even say that maybe it's already sunk. But we are going to the IMF, for Christ's sake. What is left? It means in effect that things are so bad to the extent that we cannot do this by ourselves anymore. And it is true, we can't. We have to have help, outside help. We cannot do it on our own. And that is what it means when you go to the IMF under these circumstances.
Right, Prof, I'll hold you.
That is what bailout is.
Prof, I'll hold you briefly. Get onto the other line. David Agbe is a governance expert from the Ghana Institute of Governance and Security. David, good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening, Steve.
Now, let me put an emphatic question to you. Do you think the church is meddling too much in the governance discourse?
Not at all. Not too much. But it is good that at a point in time, the church also has a certain structure to communicate with government. And so it is good that politics and religion, at times, we need to balance that equation. So I do not believe that the church is doing much of politics. But the argument being put by the leader, Dr. Otabil, is quite a controversial subject. For me, it is true that our leaders are not doing the best to come out with these economic, difficulties. But I also equally disagree with the view suggested that this country is going through a permanent tragedy of destruction or deterioration.
David, is it not?
What needs to be done at this point is that we need to be moderate in terms of articulating, in terms of using a certain words that will scare other partners in terms of our development. So our leaders, when they are speaking, they need to speak with a good tongue, such that it could be measurable, such that that word is very strong, such that it will not scare other partners which are also contributing to our development or our economy. So using words like permanent tragedy of deterioration, I disagree with that.
David, I'll have you hold. I mean, I'm very interested in exploring this that you've just said, that using words like permanent trajectory of deterioration, you think that is very bad. Let me speak to Professor Amwako Ba, who is on the other line. He's a political science lecturer. Prof, do you feel that such words are too harsh? I mean, I believe that if the country is doing well, partners should be seen. Investors will know already. We don't need to maybe say something negative to drive them away. They could be going on their own.
Look, it's actually preposterous to think that potential investors listen to Dr. Otabil before they decide what to do. I mean, that means that person is not a serious investor at all. The point is this: I'm tired of the lies. You see, you want pastors not to tell the truth. This is his own perception. You may not agree with it. Fine. Maybe you don't think it's like that, but that's okay. That's why we have freedom of speech. Don't expect everybody to speak the same way you will speak or see things the same way you will see. Like, we shouldn't do that. You don't agree with it. I have no problem with that. Maybe I will not use those words. But that's how he sees it from his perspective. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. We cannot live in a country and run a government based on falsehood and just sweet talk. That is exactly what we've done up to this point, and see what it's gotten us. Because we won't speak up, we won't tell the truth. We're always sugarcoating things. So what are we trying to do? Fool investors to come? Is that what it is? I'm telling you now, you can't fool them. A serious investor does not have to listen to these things we are saying before he decides. This is not what they look at. They look at key economic indicators. That's it. And it does not matter how much you sugarcoat your words, the indicators will not change.
David,
is what he's talking about.
David, quick, your reaction to that.
I think that Steve, we need to have that level of emotional intelligence of handling this particular matter. What I'm trying to say is that in political communication, in communication, one needs to be extra careful as to kinds of words that need to be used at a certain particular platform. That is my point. I am not saying that what Dr. Mensah Ottabel is saying is wrong, but I'm just trying to mark a certain word that permanent tragedy of destruction or deterioration. That is the key word that I want to make my emphasis on. But using the point that our leaders are failing us, I mean, actually respect such a view, because our leaders need to be more proactive in terms of handling certain situations. Our leaders need to see beyond average human level. What an average human could do shouldn't be an equal measure where our leaders also need to be doing the same thing. So our leaders need to be able to adapt practical methods of solving this country's problems. And so when it becomes like we are sounding like certain things couldn't be done, or we cannot do anything, and so the economy or the country is coming into a shambles, that one, in political communication, we don't do that. And in governance, those things are very strong words which need not to be tolerated and which need not to be, put much premium on. So my argument is that we are all saying that our leaders are not doing much, but we shouldn't be using strong words which will not benefit the country. And so the good Bible, which I believe that Dr. Ottabel used very well, also, speaks against that when we are communicating, we need to communicate with a certain language that will be able to benefit the generality. And more to the point, nobody is trying to say that government officials need to use sugar-coated words. No, in political communication, one needs to be careful to be able to craft a message that will be able to extend the country to a certain prosperity or a certain development.
David, but Jesus was very blunt with the Pharisees. I mean, he didn't have to sugarcoat. And in one angle, I'm beginning to side with Professor Amwakuba for the fact that we don't need to be sugarcoating. We have to call it what it is.
I equally agree to that. That truth must be told at a certain level. But I'm saying that certain words, I'm emphasizing all my points on certain words of permanent tragedy, of deterioration, which I am saying that we should not use such words. We should rather use other words that could actually send a signal to the government that they need to sit up to be able to do certain things practicable for us to come out of this economic quagmire. That is my point.
Right. So, David, quickly, I would like to wrap up with you, but I want to ask you, where should we be drawing the line between church and state?
I think that church and state always have a role to play as far as our governance processes are concerned. Church, they have a quite huge population. They also tend to shape the society. They also tend to contribute to society development and also try to actually preach a certain moral, values to our churches. Ghana is losing that moral value. Ghana is losing that national identity. And so the church needs to also come on board to be able to, preach such gospel to the people so that it could bring some transformation to our level of thinking. So I agree with those words being used by Dr. Otibel, that government needs to be decisive in taking decisions. And I believe that is exact word that the president used when he was campaigning, that it has been written on the notice board that government will take a decisive, measures to come out with pragmatic way or to come out with solutions.
Right.
But we are not seeing those pragmatic, we are not seeing that decisive leadership. So I agree with him by using those, careful or using such words. So I agree with him, but those words being used as permanent tragedy of deterioration
are too harsh, you would say.
I disagree with those.
Right,
words.
David, we're very grateful. That's all time will allow us, I'm afraid. And Professor Anwakuba, your closing remarks. I mean, we've had a lot of discussion trying to pinpoint where the state, where the church should be when it comes to the political discourse in our country. What do you say finally before we go?
Well, look, every senior pastor, I'm sure, is quite aware of how far he can go in the choice of words he uses. The point is this: it gets to a certain point. You cannot talk about an issue anymore. You have to go straight to the point. And that is what grabs the headline. If Dr. Otibel says a lot of things, if he continues to say the same way, this will not be national news. But it's because of how the emphasis he put it on it this time that people are paying attention to it. And that's how it should be. Maybe if more of them speak this way, then maybe the leadership will see that, look, in Ghana here, almost everybody is in a church or a mosque. And so if these religious leaders speak up like this, it means the whole nation is speaking up.
Yeah.
And they will have to sit up. They have no choice.
Right. We're
And
grateful.
get to a point where the train is sinking. It is sinking. It is getting close to the end of the cliff. You don't have the luxury of saying, please be careful. No. You say stop at once. Or maybe you push the driver aside and step on the brake yourself. That is what is needed. We are in an emergency mode now. Enough sugarcoating talk. Talk straight talk. That is what is needed.
Professor, we are very grateful for your time. Professor Anwakuba is a senior political science lecturer at the University of Science and Technology. My name is Stephen Enti, and we'll draw the curtains down here, and we'll be right back with an interactive segment. Stay with us.